Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson, and today we are talking about moving from 0 to 7 figures. I'm excited to talk to a longtime friend. Welcome, Dave Horsager.
Hey, thanks, Jane. Great to be here.
Oh, I love it when we have pros on the show. Like a professional speaker, I always know what I'm going to get. I always know kind of what to expect and how we're going to banter and things like that. Dave, tell everybody about your business.
Well, I started, and we'll get to that, but I started in 1999 with nothing, and now 21 years later, I started as a speaking business the first decade or more.
Yeah.
I still speak 100 times a year. I've been in the team just told me over 100 times in studio now the last year. So speaking is a big part still, but first of all, our whole work is around trust. Developing trusted leaders and organizations around the world. My graduate work is on trust. I think I'm one of the most researched on how trust is built in leaders and organizations, at least out of North America. So we have three big funnels for that now. One is speaking, training, my books, kind of David centric. The other is I built several ways to measure trust in organizations. So an enterprise trust index, how we measure and close gaps that would
Excellent.
compete with the Gallup 12 or something like that. 30 years of Accenture data, my grad work, and that's been used by some of the biggest companies in the world. That's a more consultative piece. And then the third piece is certifying. So we certify independent coaches to use our work now. They might be certified in strength training. We have amazing coaching community on 6 continents: Uganda, Kenya, Indonesia, around the world, using our research-based content, measurement tools, and a part of our community. Everything from City of Las Vegas to Penn State to really fun. One of our coaches in Indonesia just said, I use this with oil and banking executives, and I also use it in my volunteer work to help girls coming out of sex trafficking rebuild trust.
Oh
So
my gosh.
we love that. But that we certify people, independent coaches and kind of talent and leadership development professionals inside of companies to use that platform. It's an amazing platform with support and community. It's not just some of these add a Kajabi course and make your speech. It's just a massively big. In fact, the president of the guy that built one of the biggest coaching groups, 30-some thousand people, everybody would know the name,
Mhm.
said, "We built the biggest, you guys have built the best." So it's a significant platform for certifying folks and we have people in our network like NSAers that are certified in our work. So
That's really,
yeah.
really cool. And so, for anybody who might be out there and would like to add a tool to their tool belt, we're going to put in the show notes how they might be able to get. Maybe you could send us over
Yep.
a link directly to that Train the Trainer
I'll,
program.
yep, I'll tell you right now to trustedgecoaching.com. They can have a flea, they can have a flea too, but they could also have a free, speaking of speaking, they could have a free, demo, and it's fun no matter if you do it or not. And plus, you probably meet Gabe or Sam, and they're as cool as they come. So, yeah, trustedgecoaching.com,
I love it.
and there's a free demo there, and they can reach out to us other ways too.
All right. So, I'm going to ask you about your journey to 7, but I want to talk about how you got started. So back in 99. So this is for our listeners who might be just getting going. I mean, what you've got now feels pretty
Yeah.
big, right?
Yep.
But let's talk about where you started.
So yeah, because I would never have, just take one step at a time. And by the way, I got to 7 on speaking. To go beyond that there's a whole lot of opportunity that comes with that.
Yeah.
But I'm one of the when I went into $1 Million Speakers Group the first time, I think there of the 40 people, maybe 10 or less were actually keynote driven.
Right.
Um, you know, so now we've got a business beyond me. I'm thankful for that, but I still love to speak. So that's a big part of it. So when I started, this will be fun for people. I'm not going to give this advice to everybody, but so Lisa and I, no kids yet. We've got 4 kids now. I was director of, this tiny youth and family organization. And I was asked to speak some at things, and people asked me to speak more and more, and they have really affirmed my speaking, kind of almost spokesperson for this youth organization. And so anyway, so Lisa and I was actually using, this is so crazy because nobody knows this in NSA, but I was using magical illusions also to keep kids' attention, not in a cheesy red cummerbund, but like, like I was in jeans and a shirt, like relating to senior hires. So, I mean, that's who I was doing this way, and nobody knows it with all the research and everything now, and the boards I sit on, whatever. In fact, my friends say, "Oh, you used to deceive people for a living, and now you talk about trust, right?" But anyway, I came back to Minnesota, where we're from, and we threw everything we had into this speaking business. And I saw how a couple people did it. I thought, well, I didn't know they weren't even NSAers at the time, but this one guy was charging a certain amount. This other guy was charging like $7,500. I'm like, whoa, how do you do that? And so I put all my money into. Do you remember the folders and the one sheets and all this stuff? And I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
but
yeah,
I always believed in excellence.
yeah. Yes.
So with what I could do, I don't have a ton of things, but whatever I was going to give out, it was going to be excellent. And that's the same with, if people see our books, there's a whole story there of the way we got Simon Schuster, unlike any other book, to have it be on this beautiful paper and binding and color and all this, when no other leadership book came out that way, So, and now all of, any books you write, there's a reason. So, anyway, so just to go to the story. So we moved back 1999. By that October, we had $1.40 to our name, 60 cents in the business account, 80 cents in the home account to keep them open after paying our urgent bills, not another penny anywhere. We found a place to live for half the price of any other apartment in the Twin Cities, $350, 86-year-old Clara Miller's basement. That's where we moved. By the way, we didn't know it was illegal to live in a windowless, kitchenless,
Fire.
bathroomless basement with black mold.
Oh my gosh.
We lived there for 2 years. That's where we started this business. We'd walk upstairs to share her bathroom and her kitchen. That's what she allowed us to do.
Oh my gosh.
And that's how we started. Now, I can remember telling my brother,
You must have been just a child then, right?
20 something, right? Yep, exactly. So I said to, and my wife, I'm just amazed still, like she would do it with me. And I said to my brother, should I get a part-time job? Should Lisa get another job? Should she teach? She has a teaching degree. Whatever. He said, if you don't do that, you'll have to do this. And if you have to, you'll make it. And this isn't advice for everybody. I think there's some people, you should not take risks and you should do it this way. But for me, he knew me. And for some of us, they never make it because they never take the risk and jump in. I jumped in. I figured if I could make $700 about a month, I could pay my urgent bills.
Yeah.
So if I got a $250 thing, a $300 thing, whatever. And so that's how I started. And now, of course, there's many, in spite of myself, many zeros behind all that. But that's that Lisa and I were together by God's grace, literally praying and working till 11 at night, making calls, sending stuff, everything else, those early days.
That was back in the day when we would have the call, send, call approach. So we've talked about this a lot. We talk about it in The Wealthy Speaker. We talk about it everywhere. You call up, find out there's a need, send your packet. You probably sent a beautiful brochure as well as a VHS tape. And then you follow up, and maybe in the early days you didn't even have a tape, and that's okay.
Let me say something about that, because I had a tape. So at first I didn't do your call center call approach. I'm going to tell some people that without unsolicited, what happened reading The Wealthy Speaker for me, but that was a couple years later. But I figured, the funny thing about that is I spent all my money on these tapes. I got 70 of them, beautifully done, just beautiful, nice tapes, right? And I figured it cost me about $20 if I put everything in it, the whole package together, and sent it. And I thought, and somebody said, well, it doesn't do any good to just have them here. Send them. So I found a list. So I sent them without call, just send. Okay.
Right.
I sent all 70 of them, and I almost got one $500 booking.
So the call part of the call, send, call was an important part of the equation. And we were trying to figure out what year I wrote the first version of The Wealthy Speaker, and we couldn't quite
I
put it.
remember reading this book and I'm thinking, okay, who's Joe Calloway? Now I know, I mean, love the guy and know him and all this but I'm like, "Oh, wow, you can do that." When I read it, I dog-eared it. I've got the notes on it. I said, this is what I want to do. I was passionate about speaking, passionate about I'm like, pick your lane. I mean, that's so hard for early speakers, isn't it? I
Yeah, I
mean,
really want to talk about that though. With you have always been a trust guy in my eyes, but where did you start? Did you start with a
I
few different
y-
offerings?
yeah, I had too many things. I remember reading that and that waking me up. And I had some wins early. I mean, I was really speaking at big youth events early on.
Right.
Um,
Which was perfect
and
because you were a youngster.
I was young. I could do it.
Mhm.
And so I built some leadership curriculum in that youth development organization I'd been with, and even got asked to teach at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy and some other things like on that just that content that I talked about. So, but I I took that at first. It was kind of like I'll do that. I had a specific talk with some illusions, kind of magical illusions, whatever, and so it was some specificity, but I was kind of all over the place until early mid 2000s. My grad work around trust really got helped me get specific,
Yeah.
and but I was. Yeah, I don't know what to say about that except for that I remember that was a wake up call because back then you're like, I'll take this, I'll take this. I don't know, I'm gonna take this, and that was a problem.
Susie Humphreys, was it Susie Humphreys? She had a speech called "I Can Do That." Pretty much anything somebody asked her to do, I can do that.
Yep,
In
that's
her
funny.
delightful Texas accent. So I want to talk to you about your road to seven figures, and I'd love to just kind of unearth three key ideas that you might have or pieces of advice that you have for people to actually get there. What do you think were really some things that allowed you to hit flashpoints along the way?
Boy, to get down to three is going to be hard, but I'll tell you this:
Okay.
disciplined work at the most important things. Okay.
Mm,
Do you want me to explain each one as I go, or just give you overview first? Just I'll give you this one. Okay.
all right.
So that what I mean by that is that whole call send call. I
Mm,
got good at it. We
yeah.
called. I'd call this many people. I remember also Larry Wingett spoke into my life in those days, and it was kind of like he said, take 2 hours and or 2 or 4 hours and just call. If you do this and keep this many people and just call, call, call. We called. A lot of people say, "Oh, cold call doesn't work." Whatever. We did it, and we did it, and it worked. And I remember even towards when social media got bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're skeptical. Everybody I asked in those days about social media. Now we've got a team now and a lot more happening there. But even now, frankly, social media is not working to me at all like relationships and even like a call works.
Right.
So it's good we do it. We have some ways to be able to be bigger, but I just think a lot of people spend a load of time undisciplined.
Yeah.
So
And I want to go dig deep into that because when you decide, like you decided, maybe it was the Larry Wingett, 2 hours or whatever it might have been. When you decided, you committed to that process. And so if you aren't happy with the level of business that you have, you must commit to something that's going to change that, whether it be 2 hours every day of the week, 5 days a week, or whether it be like 2 hours a week. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
It's all going to move you forward.
And this is really important, and most people just don't do it. I can't believe so many speakers they ding around on social media. They do this, they do that, and there's a lot of good, fun things. Most of the most known people on a lot of these platforms aren't ones that are speaking that much. I mean, because they're doing all this stuff on their little social media groups. I'm not
Right.
saying that that's wrong. I'm just saying for me, I can just speak to that it wasn't it what worked even today. Still in this business, we do something called storm starters.
Tell me about
So that's actually it's a mix of your work with Larry Wingett with Mark LeBlanc and him saying, Do the number one, do a storm starter every day. Who's the number one person I should get back to? Start with that. Every salesperson, every person, get back to that number, that top person. And it turns out, instead of doing 2 hours a day, we don't do even close to that. Most things are inbound now, but we still, who's the top person I could get back to? Or sometimes we generally have five. So what are the top for the sales people? Not everybody in the team, but like, so if it was me and I'm a solopreneur still, I would say first thing in that day, who are the five key people I could get back to,
Mm.
connect with, reconnect with, had me last year. That's that discipline of that might only take 20 minutes. That might take, and remember, it's not that we reach them, it's that I just got tried. So I might only gotten one of them, but that's storm surge every day. Who are those five that we could go back to? So
And I think that's where you could make a social media case, is that if you are about to reach out to someone or reconnect with someone, do it on LinkedIn,
sure.
and then do a phone call, and then do an email. Like, do it in several different ways. But
Yep.
that's a very intentional and disciplined approach to it. And I think intention and discipline are two
Huge.
huge keys. Okay, so we've got number one,
Okay.
discipline on the most important things. What's number two?
Number two, it's old news, and it's just that you have to actually be really great on the platform.
Mm.
And I mean, look, today we're compared against the best TED Talks, the best speakers, the best. It's such a
TikTok, I mean, anything.
everything. So you have to be. You don't have to be. You have to be the best you. So I
Mhm.
don't have to be Oprah, and I don't have to be Renee, and I don't have to be, but I do have to be the best, most authentic me. And that, or close, I have to keep doing it. So even today, I still have speech coaching. I still have these ways I'm getting mentoring in. So just to speak to this a little bit early on, by the way, if you go back to when I was 18 years old, I actually won a speaking contest of about 2,000 kids,
That's cool.
and it gave me, I earned a free, all expense paid trip to Israel. It was a big deal. Okay.
Wow.
That's why I worked hard. And by the way, even then, little tenacity of learning, in the county level, I got second, but the top two go forward. In the regional level, top two go forward, I was second. Districts, top two go forward, I was second. And my dad said, if you wanted to win, you could. And
Wow.
I'll never forget that. And I said, I went to I wasn't on the speech team. I was in sports, but I always did this one speaking contest through this thing called 4-H Youth Development. And so I went to every pastor. I mean, we didn't go to church there. I mean, I just said, would you watch the speech? Because I knew they speak every week, right? I
Yeah.
went to my pastor, I went to other pastors. I went to the speech coach in our town. I went to the speech coach in the town next to us. And I got all critique. And at state, I beat everybody, including all those I lost to. But I learned something. You can get better, and you must. So then later, when I started doing this more, I took stand-up comedy lessons without ever wanting to be a stand-up comedian. I
Mm.
took improv lessons without ever wanting to do improv. I took speech coaching. I took everything from kind
Boys.
of
Yeah.
frip this style to more relaxed. I mean, just different, and then find what's you. So there's one thing there of continually. Now, here's how I'd say what this means for people today. What this means for people today is, how do I authentically engage people well today? For
Mm.
us, now we're able to do things that others aren't able to do now. So, I mean, overnight last March, we put a 5-camera studio in place in the boardroom became a 5-camera studio. But we're getting paid. Like, every speaker doesn't have to do this, but it is okay. What can we do in our studio? We could start saying, hey, instead of Dave, we're going to keep that fee up pretty high virtually, but you get 4 people. And so for us, I have a producer in there all the time. He was already full time doing all my video stuff, and we have my assistant would be put people in and out of chat rooms quickly and easily, not having to be messing around. We can do it so fast
Mm-hmm.
now. And then we have a person chatting. This is something nobody does that I hear about.
Breakout. I think you meant to say breakout
I
when you
meant
said,
to say breakouts.
yeah, yeah,
And then I have another person full time that's in my keynotes chatting like, "Oh, Dave just said this. If you didn't hear it, it's that. Here's a
yeah.
video on that. Here's a
Oh,
whatever." They all go away
your
from
hype person. She's your
they
hype
go
hype
they
man.
go away saying that was the best we ever had. So
Yeah.
so that's what we can do. Now, so who can't do you might can't do that. Okay, fine, you can't do that. So you're by yourself. Well, what could you do to engage today? Put your computer on a lazy Susan so that you can speak straight to it and then you can turn it a little bit and have a whiteboard to do a little bit of engagement,
Mm.
or turn it a little bit and have a TV over here to have like, what can you do? And that means, how can I engage? So it's not just on the platform, we still have to be excellent,
Yeah.
but how can I engage? And some things don't work, by the way. Some things people say, like, for example, my view on generally on polling is they're terrible.
Mhm.
Polling generally takes people off of looking at me. Usually, many people put polls that aren't as relevant as they should be, so people don't feel, it's just like, what does work? How can you get better virtually? I guess that's all. I could give my own tips, but it doesn't have to be what I can do.
So the tip is platform skills. Get
Mhm.
better every day because there is no better form of marketing than a great presentation. And I believe right now is the time to be leveling up your virtual, to be figuring out how to come through that camera with more engagement, etc. And I love that you brought that up. What is tip number 3, Dave?
Tip number 3 is become a genuine expert on something. So, and really, there's a couple ways to think about this. So I became what many would say, I think, is the most researched on trust, at least out of North America. There's a massive research team, the biggest PR firm in the world, Edelman, out of the UK. We would affirm a lot of what they do, but we put out. Not only did my grad work become about trust when no one was, very few were talking about trust. I mean, Covey's book wasn't out. Nobody was, but back when I was doing my grad work, trust, people weren't talking about it the way they
Oh,
are now. Now everybody's talking about trust, but we were here. I mean, so we grad work, books. I have Trusted Leader. I have Trust Edge. I have, but now we put out one of the most significant studies on trust and leadership every year. So we have a team, we put out the Trust Outlook. Anybody can go to the white paper for free, trustoutlook.com, and you
nice.
can see our research. Last year, an outside university revalidated my framework from my grad work as the way trust is built globally. So
Mm.
there's another benefit to this. One is, I'm not just social media guru, like I say this so I know this. It's
Mhm.
like I actually am asked to be in
Steeped.
board. Exactly, I'm asked to be in boardrooms. But this seems overwhelming, by the way, and it's not as overwhelming to get there as you might think. You could say I was just a very engaging motivational speaker way back. I would
Mhm.
never use that. No one here would use that term today. So there is and people could do it so much faster than I did. Man, I took forever. Just like I took forever to write the book. It's like my first book. I said I'll get that done in a couple months. 4 years later. Anyway, um, but what I would say is, one other thing I noticed at NSA, the $1 million speaker people that got to know before I was in the group, they had a framework. They had a they had a you
Formula.
called exactly a formula. And I'm like, and so this framework, this 8 pillar framework, 8 pillars of trust, they weren't pillars coming out of research. They were, but that framework has become so significant, whether we're using an enterprise trust index or I'm speaking, everything comes back to that framework. And so that becoming a real genuine expert, if you can, I I will give an extra credit piece though. I think I said the hard work. I will say, here's a little tip everybody can do better. I cannot tell you how much business we've gotten because we're good at thanking people.
Mm.
I we Back when we had nothing, someone gives you 50,000 or 25,000 or 5,000 for a keynote, and you don't send them a thank you of
Mhm.
some value. It doesn't even have to be, I mean, a handwritten verse would be like, that's unique today. But we have always thanked well, and people, how many times have people said to us, no one's ever done that before? I'll give you an example right now to a relatively new friend of mine that everybody out there knows. Here, this will be a humbling experience for me right in front of everybody. Mark Mark Victor Hansen.
Mhm.
Okay, if you don't know who he is, other than the Bible, he is the author of more books than anybody in the world, author or co-author. So many of you'll know, with Canfield, he was Chicken and Soup, so those 456 million books right there, okay? But he's written about 100 other books. So nobody in the world, not J.K. Rowling, nobody has sold more books than Mark Victor Hansen. So I had him on my podcast through a friend, the Trusted Leader Show. I don't know, a couple months ago. So last week, he calls the office. We're having lunch around the boardroom table. We have social distance and whatever, but we have a pretty open space. So there's maybe 8 of us in. Okay.
Right.
And it's lunchtime, but the phone's ringing. It says Mark Hansen. Should we pick it up? Shouldn't we? Whatever. And usually someone does right away. We try to treat people, but anyway, we had a few less people. Anyway, she said she picked it up. I said, yeah, you better in case it's Mark Victor Hansen. There's
Yeah.
a few Mark Hansens in the world. He
Right.
picks up. It was him. He said, and they send it to me. I go into my office, and he said, sorry to make a short story long. You hate that. This is not one. This is not one for the stage. But he said, I needed to just thank you. I don't even remember being on your podcast. Isn't that funny? He said, but nobody has sent me that. He said, thank you for the honey, but actually it's this big, beautiful thank you for anybody that's on my podcast.
Aw.
Okay. And he said, I just needed to reach out and thank you personally. And he said, I didn't have your number, anything other than your office that I found. And he said, the funny thing about this is, he said, I've been on 350 podcasts a year. I
Mhm.
didn't remember being on yours, but I got this thank you. What did he do next? He talked to me for a half hour and he recommended me to 5 podcasts with 1 million or more listeners each.
Wow.
So that's one example that happened last week, but we
Literally
think
an example of you get more flies with honey.
there, but we thank people for being our podcast. We thank
Oh,
people for
that's
having us do a show. We thank people for using our index within reason. Walmart, some of these can't take gift thank yous, but
yeah, that's really lovely. Okay, so just to recap, point number one is to get to 7, discipline on the most important things.
Mhm.
Number 2 is platform skills get better all the time. It's your number 1 form of marketing. And number 3 is to really truly be the expert. Now, I want to talk to you about the fear that you might have had when you chose trust as your field and it wasn't yet the cool subject. Like you had
Yes,
to almost grow a
totally.
category onto yourself. So, talk a little
Yep.
bit about fear and the fact that you knew this was important and just kept going.
Well, in those days too, trust was like that's a soft skill. That doesn't affect the bottom
Yeah,
line.
we
That
don't know.
doesn't. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a couple things there. One, I had this epiphany, not some big spiritual epiphany, but Lisa and I were in Arizona. I think the most expensive place I had gotten to stay to that point. We didn't have kids yet, so this was the lows. I'll never forget it. Like, whoa, you know. So we're somewhere at this conference, and I just said, we're looking up at the stars that night. It is kind of we get to have this place with a deck, I mean, I just think at that point we're kids basically like, oh
Yeah.
wow, you
We're
know,
living the life. We've made it.
exactly. And I just said, the thing is, they think it's a leadership problem. It's not. It's a trust problem. And I started thinking that's a sales problem. It's not a sales problem. It's a trust problem. So I started to see, and you'll see on my books now, the leading indicator is never it's always a trust issue. So the only reason I follow a leader or not is trust. The only reason I buy or not is trust. The only reason the only way to amplify a marketing message is trust. I could tie it to anything, and it wasn't one thing. So I just kept. Partly there is even with my grad work, I wasn't going to do. I was speaking okay. We were doing fine on this kind of whatever I had going. But I just had this epiphany with that too. Like I'm supposed to go get a master's degree at that time, and and I just became interested more and more in trust. The research fueled the passion. We started to use this in a company, and that company said in 9 months they saved 2 to 4 million in attrition costs. Then we had somebody use it, and they say they tripled sales in 90 days. Then I had someone say it saved their marriage, and this kind of helped it. And then we had companies using, and then over those years more, then I saw it changing me, how I parent, how I am as a leader. So I became absolutely passionate. But I mean, I still have people today say, "You talked about trust for 20 years. What's your next thing?" I'm like,
Yeah. This is
nothing. It's it. Yeah.
it. I
So
stay in my lane. I'm staying in the lane.
and by the way, I'll say something that was I don't know if you said it in the first book. I'll never forget the worksheets with the pick a lane stuff, but there I don't maybe you can respond to this if you said it or how you'd affirm this, but to me when you said pick a lane, at some point there was 2 ways to niche, and one way at least the way I think about it, is the audience. So some people get exceptional with real estate folks.
Right.
Okay.
You pick your
And
lane as picking your audience. Yes.
either your audience
Hmm.
or your subject. And
Right.
I went the way, and it was freeing to me when I could pick the subject lane.
Yeah.
And now, we work with corruption issues in the president of East Africa. We work with the New York Yankees. We work with Walmart. We work with
Right.
FedEx. And for me, but we are very much in a lane if it's not about trust. So it wasn't audience for me. Once I was freed to be subject expert instead of audience expert, which you can make a ton of money if you just want to do that. But
Yeah. So the way I would define that is pick a lane is your topic, pick your niche is your audience.
okay,
And some people will go out their entire careers or their entire life of their business and never pick a niche audience. And that is perfectly
hmm
okay. I will say the more narrow the lane, the more narrow the audience, it just gives you focus when you go
right.
out. And so you probably know who your top three buyers are
hmm
based on the fact that trust is really hot in particular topics or something
And
or
and I think
particular
the bigger
industry.
you get,
Mm-hmm.
and the more unique and desired your topic,
Yes.
almost the more open your audiences become because they're coming to you. Like, oh, I see how trust affects innovation. I see how it affects sales. I see how it affects leadership.
Putting
And
two and
so
two together. Yeah.
because we got known in trust, because they're seeing the white paper, because whatever, I'm able to use trust in corruption issues in East Africa or in sales issues there or with the team issues on a pro sports team.
That's really cool. I
So
want to introduce you to one of my clients, Pamela Barnum, who does the body language parts of trust. She's a former undercover police officer and prosecuting attorney. She's really cool, and I'm going to hook the two of you up because I think you could have some interesting conversations about trust. Um, okay, talk about your new book.
So, Trusted Leader is the new book, and it basically, Trust Edge was 365 pages over a decade ago, and like it turns out people rather have a little shorter book. and even though that was Wall Street Journal bestseller authentically and everything else, it's still selling. But Trust, and then Daily Edge was a bestseller too. But Trusted Leader, a couple things. One, we said, how can this be more shareable? So the whole first half is a story, is a leadership parable,
Mm,
really getting great. I mean, there's a lot of those out there today. This one, it's getting high critical reviews,
that's
which
awesome.
we're excited about that. And then secondly, we've learned a lot in the last decade of how you can apply this work tomorrow morning.
Mm,
So this last half is application. You don't just leave you in a story. It's how can I apply this tomorrow morning? Takeaways they can use. A couple things about that first part. One, we kept seeing, like I said, trust is the leading indicator. The only way to drive innovation is to have trust in the team go up so people share ideas. Because how do I deal with learning in a classroom? There's only one way. You either have to increase trust in the teacher, the content, or the psychological safety of the room. You have to deal with trust. Diversity issues of our day. The biggest Harvard study shows diversity on its own pits people against each other unless you increase trust. The only way to get the benefits. So
mm,
it shifts thinking about trust. And even when people think they know it all, like I did in my grad work, I thought I know it all about trust. Oh, it's just transparency and vulnerability. Turns out it's not. Some of
right.
your kids are so transparent on social media, I don't trust them for a second
Mm,
because confidentiality is also trust. So it gives a shift of thinking about this idea that's a little more complex than people think at first, and then it shows the not just why trust matters more than ever, but how this eight pillar framework, it brings that a lot to life of how they can apply it tomorrow morning. So um, it's gotten great reviews. It's really fun to see what's happening. We're right here at the beginning of the launch, and super excited about it. So trusted leader. The other thing is in the research we kept finding year in year, number one reason people leave an organization. No, excuse me. Number one reason people want to work for an organization
okay.
ahead of more pay,
Mm-hmm.
trusted leadership. So
That's
they
wonderful.
want to be a trusted leader or they want to follow one.
So, The Trusted Leader is the title of the book, and I'm
Not
going
not like Facebook. Just take the out. Just
okay.
trusted leader. There you
Trusted
go.
Leader, and it eight pillars that drive results, and available across all the platforms on what date?
It is available right now.
Okay,
Just came out. So
great.
just right now. So when people are listening, it's available. It just came out. And
Amazon.
Lance,
What's your website URL, Dave?
TrustEdge.com is the company Trust Edge Leadership Institute's platform. So TrustEdge.com. Of
Okay.
course, DavidHorsager.com, TrustedLeaderBook.com, some of these others. But if you go to TrustEdge.com, that is the whole institute, and you can go to either me, the research, or all that we do.
Beautiful. And I know there's going to be speakers out there who could be using your index and some of the tools that
Yep.
you have, and perhaps they even want to get certified with you, which would be amazing. Dave,
I would say something there. Just that one with the easiest. You can reach us any which way, but trustedgecoaching.com. They
okay.
can jump right in and get a free demo. That's pretty fun.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's awesome. You know, you have helped a lot of people, and David Averin speaks of you so fondly when you gave him a piece of advice. Tell everybody what advice you gave Mr. David Averin. Now, this was a long time ago, so in context.
Yep, it was a long time ago. I can't even remember how many years. We're sitting out just having a drink. I'm probably having water, but we're poolside out at whatever. I don't even remember. I think it was San Diego, but one of the NSA events, and it was the free night, and we're all together, a few of us guys, and he got to a side conversation with me, or we did, and great guy, and he said something about his business, and I said we were talking about it a little bit, and I said, Dave, you don't, and I could be direct with him. I mean, he's a good friend. I said,
Yeah,
Dave, you don't have a business.
yeah.
You have a practice, and without you, it's nothing. And I said, I want something. And by the way, I don't fault people.
Hmm.
For a long time, for a decade, even when I got to, like I said, when I got to $1 million, it was on me. But
Hmm.
if I died, there's nothing for my family tomorrow. It's
Right.
that, right? So I just said, I'm trying to build a business. One is a business for speaking. So there's an engine behind that. That's first.
Right.
Then you can also go to a bigger business if you'd like. But just the business behind speaking of getting consistency. I see so many people, as an example. I'm jumping around here. So I should just let you
That's
ask
okay.
questions. Okay.
Continue down the road of where you were going. I see so
Well,
many people.
okay. So I see so many people like um, wanted that do want to finally build a business. So
Hmm.
then they think, oh, I need sales. I'm gonna hire a salesperson.
Yeah.
I've got some great salespeople, but let me tell you, that is not the first person to hire.
Okay. Who is the first person to
The
hire?
first person to hire is the right executive assistant.
To take all of the
$10 work, so you're only doing $1,000 work,
yeah,
$10,000 an hour work. So
exactly.
that's a start. Now the problem is, as I grow, I need way more assistants. Now I have a chief of staff and assistants and all these things. And there's a few books around this that are interesting. Michael Hyatt's new book on how to he basically runs his company. I think it's over $10 million a year company. 23 people, and over half of them are assistants. The right assistants actually can create an amazing company, especially in the space that we're in, service space and everything.
Right.
So, so anyway, I would say absolutely it is first role is stop doing the figuratively $10 an hour work so you can do the $1,000 an hour work. And there's
Yes.
so many things we're doing. I also remember when Wing It said to me, hire it done, right? Hire it done. I'm like, really? I have no money. I'm in the basement, black mold, whatever. But if I could hire that done to do that, all of a sudden I did grow faster. Yeah. So
So the hire that you made during the black mold years was an executive assistant.
I soon at first you got to do all the work, right?
Yes.
So I was thankful to have Lisa with me, and we weren't having 4 kids in 5 years yet, so that was crazy town. Um, but basically, when we're still in the black mold, we did it. Then
Yeah.
we moved to I couldn't afford I couldn't afford a house yet. So I bought a duplex because then someone would pay rent, that right?
Yes.
And then at that point, in fact I hired before I could pay myself a full fee. Like I would hire to pay them, and that helped me grow faster. I be careful with what I'm saying about risks for some people, but
Yes.
basically I often hired before I could almost afford it.
Yeah.
And
I have a postcard about that saying you cannot make your decisions. Um, you cannot expect to have like massive success while making these decisions based in fear is kind of the
Mhm.
I'm torturing my own little postcard, but I took it out to the kitchen so I don't have it
Yep,
here.
it's great.
Anyway, making your decisions from the place where you're already having the success, which is kind of what you
Hmm.
did. You hired beyond what your means really were in order to take that leap. And taking the leap without the net, that's how Dave did it. We don't always say you have to, quit your
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
job and go and do this. That's not necessarily the only way to do it, but it certainly shows that you knew yourself, your brother knew you enough to say, dude, just do it.
And and
Right?
and I just got to honor, because I didn't really at the end there honor Dave Averin, by the way, speaking of two Daves today, but
Yes,
that he really got buckled down and created a process
he did.
to drive business. And that's what we had kind of done that model first, that way. And he did it probably to a better way than us, and just in speaking, frankly. But that's I just want to honor him back. He did the work, he figured it out, and he created a system for driving
Yeah.
that.
We
Um,
we actually have Dave Averin as one of our masters inside the Wealthy Speakers School, and he goes step by step through how they do that. And we're very grateful that he comes back on occasion and does some live calls with our audience. Well, Monsieur, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. We've given all the URLs. We'll put those in the show notes if people want to be in touch. Any final thoughts that you'd like to share with our listeners?
You know, two things. I would say number one, I have a lot of them, but number one, everything of value is built on trust. You're losing trust every day with your clients and customers, except if you're putting trust building activities in. That leads to number two. It's the little things done consistently that make the biggest difference.
Hmm.
Consistency matters. Little things done consistently, not the big things, little things. Doing that call hitting the storm starters every day,
Yeah.
sending that every day. Quit doing every social media and do one well. Or on LinkedIn. I mean, do something consistently, right? And then number three is straight from the farm that I grew up on. And if any of you see picture, our Facebook friends, you see that I live on a hobby farm to try to give my kids like a work
Beautiful
experience.
experience.
Yeah,
That,
we
is that where the honey came from?
no, but not one not too far away.
Okay.
Number three is, my dad would say this: you gotta do the work. That
Hmm.
pile doesn't shovel itself. The hay bales don't bale themselves, and the corn doesn't cultivate itself. You got to do the work, and this is an amazing business. I mean, I get my next, where is this, Vienna? I got whatever. We get to stay at amazing places. We get to share a message we care about, we're passionate about, but there is a trade-off. You got to do some work.
Hmm.
And most people actually don't want to do the work that it takes to. So having a coach like this, so people like you, so that you're doing the right work, matters. But you do have to do the work until you don't have to.
Well, thank you for letting me know that we were a part of your journey
I can
back
give
in the
that
day.
full, even from afar, when I was just reading the book. And Joe Calloway then spoke highly of you too, and he even mentored through you, uh, your words. And I can't say it enough, but I'm grateful for you. I'm grateful for many along this journey that helped me, some from afar and some not. But Jane, well, the speaker, you had a huge role in
Thank
who I
you.
get to be today. So.
That's so lovely. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Hey, folks, if you're listening at home and you've appreciated what you heard, let us know. Reach out. Drop me a line, jane@speakerlauncher.com. Leave us a review or a rating, and make sure that you subscribe so that you do not miss any more gold like today. Thank you, Dave, and we'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now.